Crawling, the exercise that gives people a lot, but that no one actually likes doing. Nonetheless, we're going to show you how to do some crawling today. I'd like to see you practice it a little bit more. There might be some prerequisites that you have to focus on. I'm pretty sure I've done a bit of a section on wrists. For some of you that aren't used to putting a lot of weight or pressure on the ground, you might have to work on some of the wrist exercises that we have in our exercise section. Nonetheless, let's have a look at crawling. We'll start off with a standard crawl. You're just going to warm up with, I would suggest, or get your pattern right, is work with your knees on the ground, small steps in opposites. Now, when I get people to crawl that haven't done it, obviously since they were babies, they struggle with it with a coordination point of view. So we're trying to do this contralaterally, or when my right hand moves forward, my left knee moves at the same time. I see a lot of you guys doing your crawling and you just get a bit muddled up and do the same side, or what we call ipsilateral. So nonetheless, I want you to work on small steps, nothing too big. All right, small steps backwards and also forwards. Once you've got that pattern, okay, that's when you can start lifting your knees off the ground. I will say this, what the Ido Portal guys had tried to reiterate with us from working the strong sort of wrist position with the pisiform joint here and into the middle of the fingers is placement of hands when you're crawling or taking a step forward almost. So I'll show you here. It's not necessarily easy to do. I don't necessarily do it all the time, but if you can practice that, if you feel that bone in your wrist there, that tiny one there, striking down first, like so, each time you make a movement forward. The hard bit is doing the opposite on the way back. So again, they're trying to complement some of the ring exercises that you might do in terms of getting your hands and wrists nice and strong for that. Okay, I'll start back here. I've practiced or warmed up doing my opposites, going forwards and backwards on my knees. Now we're going to try and lift our knees off the ground. So I'm trying to keep my knees rather close to the ground. Okay, I'm going to take a step forward. I am lifting my hands and placing down, and I'm trying to do my hands in that pattern that I showed you. I'm trying to keep my hips nice and stable, just like so. Now, for some of you, you might need to just work on crawling forwards rather than adding in the addition of doing it backwards. Doing it backwards really throws a spanner in the works with your coordination. It's not to say that you can't do it, but you might just need to get the basic movement right of going forward. So I'll show you again. Knees off the ground by a centimetre, like so. Small steps. You can look out to the horizon if you're a bit worried about your posture. I'm just trying to analyse my position. Again, watch the hips aren't swaying side to side. Keep it nice and steady. I'll just show you a couple of things that you can do to further test yourself with your crawling. Okay, once you feel like you've got your crawling right and you're getting pretty strong at it, and when we say pretty strong at it, you can turn just that crawling into a bit of a workout. If you did 10 minutes of crawling, you've done a pretty good job because it is tough. Take into consideration, as I mentioned before, the wrists, and I should also mention your toes. If you're doing it barefoot, which is probably a pretty good idea, it is definitely going to work on some of that extension through the toe, which is not a bad thing. You're just going to have to be careful on how much you can take. If you need to put your shoes back on, it might be a bit nicer. Now, you can put anything on your back when you're doing crawling. And the reason why we're going to put something on our back is just to make us stabilise a little bit more. It is quite incredible from when I practice doing this, how much your core has to engage when you're doing this crawling. All right, so I'll show you what it looks like. It's not easy putting the pole on your back. All right, But this is not, it's not necessarily just an exercise to keep your spine neutral. But as I said, if you're wanting to really work your core, then I would say probably working your core whilst in movement is probably one of the best things that you can do. So this adds a different dimension to my crawling. And I remember doing quite a few rounds of this at a movement camp, and it was tough. Okay? So if you haven't got a wooden dowel or pole, look, you can place anything on your lower back. But again, a pole like this makes it very, very challenging. So that's option one with the pole on your back. I'm just going to turn around for a moment and head the other way. So you saw the pole went from my head down to on my back, down to my glutes. What I think is even harder is putting a pole like this on your lower back. Okay? So with the crawling, I'm only doing a short distance here. I would say you probably want to go a little bit longer to really start feeling the full effect of it. Nonetheless, this is what it looks like. So hopefully I've got the pole all right. I'm going to lift my hips up. So this makes it even tougher because I'm really having to balance out my hips. I hope you can see that all right there. And when I did rounds of this, my goodness, not only my core lighting up, different muscles in my hip having to work. Okay. All right, so that's what that looks like. The pole is going to fall off your back. Don't get too frustrated. The only way you get better is you practice. So that's crawling a couple of ways with a dowel.